Welcome into the Beaver Sports radio show. My name is Mitchell Monge, joined here by my partner and good friend Soren Carr on this Wednesday afternoon. Time is 5 o'clock. We got a rainy afternoon in Corvallis here. First time we gotten some rain in a little bit, Soren. I mean, how's your Wednesday been going?
You know, it's a typical fall in Corvallis, getting into that winter feel. The Oregon rain is coming out finally after this unusually warm fall.
Yeah, so Oregon State football, tough loss last week to Utah, 52-7. But good news coming out of the Oregon State football program. D lineman Jordan Whitley has received a clock extension from the NCAA and is now a redshirt junior, so he has eligibility next year in 2020. That was one of the big questions going into the season when Whitley transferred here. Would he be able to receive that extra year? And it seems that the NCAA has granted that, so Whitley will have one more season, which is good news for Oregon State's defense, which clearly struggled.
Need some of that.
And one other thing we'll mention really quickly is per Nick Dashel of the Oregonian, Omar Hicksanu, a safety senior, has left the program. He will enter the NCAA transfer portal, so one less DB for Oregon State. We'll talk more football later. We've got Josh Yuen of the Daily Californian joining us at 5:15. We'll discuss Cal football as Oregon State and Cal tip off from Memorial Stadium this Saturday at 11:30 a.m., earliest kickoff time for Oregon State.
That is an early one. Should be exciting, though.
Actually, I think it's Cal's second game starting in the 11 o'clock window. They played Ole Miss at 9 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, definitely. You're right there.
So, Soren, let's go ahead and get a quick OSU sports breakdown to start us off.
All right. The breakdown this week starts with the rankings. Beavers in the top 25 in the country. Cross country, the women are number 25 in the nation and number 5 in the West region. The following wrestlers are in the preseason top 25. Number 20, Grant Willits. Number 16, Hunter Willits, brothers there, and Colt Doyle. Men's golf recently jumped to number 14 in the country after back-to-back wins. Women's basketball is preseason number 6, and some All-American midseason highlighted forms are Isaiah Hodgins, of course, and honorable mention, Blake Brandel. So, started off with basketball this week. Men's team kicks it off with an exhibition game against Carroll College of Montana next Wednesday, the 23rd, followed by another against Warner Pacific of Portland, a little warm-up there. Then they officially open up the season against Cal State Northridge, Tuesday, November 5th at 8 p.m. A little highlight to start off this is Trace Tinkle has been named to the Julius Erving Small Forward Award watch list among 20 other small forwards in the country. Big deal there. Now on to women's basketball. Huge deal. Team USA will play an exhibition game at Gill Coliseum versus Scott Ruick's squad November 4th. It is one of 4 games Team USA will play against NCAA teams. This game will feature some of the best female basketball players in the WNBA in the history of the WNBA, including Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Kelsey Plum, and Elena Deladone. Huge deal there.
MVP right there. Elena Deladone
after
just
winning
won
the
it.
championship as well. Oregon State is one of 12 schools that will be featured as part of the NCAA's road trip. The NCAA digital team will spend time at each of the 12 schools gathering content for its digital platforms. The Beavers Women's will be one of these programs, and they officially start off their season November 9th, Saturday, in the WNIT against UC Irvine here in Corvallis. Speaking of men's golf earlier, the success continues, of course, as they won 3 straight now tournaments, including one of them was a head-to-head down in Nevada. This was hosted at Tristing Tree Golf Club in Corvallis. Some highlights was sophomore Carson Berry won his first individual event, shooting 11 under par for 3 rounds, including an ace at the 224-yard par 3 fourth hole.
Whoa.
And the team won by 19 strokes at 18 under.
Jeez.
With some top-tier teams there. Pretty impressive. The woman, just in the top 25, had a tough finish for tied 11th in Palo Alto for the Stanford Invitational on a very difficult course. The men's soccer team now lost in a match at UW 2-1 this last Sunday. Adrian Crespo scored a late goal in the 86th minute for a tough loss in Seattle, though. The women's soccer team, of course, after that hot 8-0 start, lost 2-0 last Saturday to the Stanford Cardinal and had a gutsy 0-0 tie against Berkeley at home as well. Volleyball now. Women's volleyball had back-to-back road games against top 25 opponents this weekend on Friday at UW and Sunday at Wazoo. They lost both matches, however, including to the ranked Huskies, but are showing signs of improvement with the very difficult Pac-12 conference in volleyball. Now on to football. The Beavers, of course, had a really close one this weekend against Utah, 52-7. Now the 12th ranked team in the country really showing their stuff coming here to Reser and just running over them. Running back Zach Moss, of course, and dual threat quarterback Tyler Huntley led the way for the Utes as they routed the Beavers. Moss rushed for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 91-yard score in the first quarter on only 5 carries. To inch closer to surpassing the all-time school rushing record, Huntley was efficient as ever, 14 for 17, 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. A bright spot for the Beavers, though. Isaiah Hodgins, a Bletnikoff Award watch list member, had another solid night statistically with 8 catches for 77 yards, even though he had a lockdown defender in Jalen Johnson, a possible All-American contender there.
Yep. I believe this is Hodgins' his first game all season without a touchdown catch. Can you believe that?
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Continues to lead the Pac-12 in receiving yards per game.
Yep.
4th nationally, and he's on pace to set a school single season record for touchdown catches. He currently has 9 with Brandon Cooks, owning the record at 16 in 2013. Now, we go on to Berkeley.
So, Cal's one of those teams that's, done a really good job in transitioning their program. They were under, the Tedford years and everything. They had a lot of success and then kind of fell into just the bottom of the conference in a sense. They struggled to find an identity. And then they brought in head coach Justin Wilcox. And Justin Wilcox, defensive-minded head coach, really turned that team around. They got Bo Baldwin, their offensive coordinator from Eastern Washington, who had a lot of success with the air raid there. Obviously, Cal struggled offensively, but really, for Cal, they found an identity defensively, and that starts with the middle linebacker, Evan Weaver. And Evan Weaver's, he's just
You got quite the identity in him.
Right, he's a baller up the middle. National Defensive Player of the Year candidate, leads the nation in total tackles with 84, second in solo tackles with 48, second in total tackles per game, 14.0, third in solo tackles per game, 8.0. The kid's just a stud. He's somebody, if you're starting you got a defensive team and you could pick probably any defensive player in the Pac-12 to start it with. He's one of those guys who will be near the top of everybody's list who's going to anchor a defense, and he's going to play, and he makes the best part about Evan Weaver is that he makes everybody around him better. So that's going to be the struggle for Oregon State, is not only to contain Evan Weaver, but to limit his ability to make plays, which means you got to, as an offensive line, you've got to be able to get your double team blocks and get off to the second level and block Evan Weaver, because he's going to be one of those guys who's got a nose for the football, and he's going to be flying all over the field, just making tackles left and right.
Speaking of a nose for the football, he has a tremendous ability to read plays. If you watch some of his highlights, reminds me some of Luke Kuechly in the NFL, one of the best players in the game right now. Linebacker, of course, for the Panthers. But Evan Weaver is not the only player on their defense who's strong. Their secondary's been extremely strong.
Oh, yeah.
Their front seven. Of course, that bizarre game up in Seattle when they beat UW kind of got them on the map this year, and then winning at Ole Miss, always impressive. But the injury of their quarterback, of course, is a serious question for the team right now.
Right, no
and
Chase
also,
Garbers.
of course, and also their offensive line has been banged up. Oh, no.
So interestingly enough, current Beavers offensive line coach Jim Mahalchek, he was at Arizona previously, but before that, he was the associate head coach and the offensive line coach, run game coordinator, pretty much same title he has at Oregon State, at California from 2002 to 2008. And then again, he was back for one more year in 2011 to 2012. Oregon State's defensive coordinator, Tim Tibesar, was a graduate assistant at Cal, helped out with the offensive line as well as other parts. That was back in 1999. So a lot of shared similarities here between California and Oregon State.
Fun fact here, 2 of Oregon's top high school seniors, Lake Oswego's Casey Filkins, Jesuits' Andy Alfieri, who has multiple older brothers, one of them actually at Oregon State right now, both made verbal commits there earlier this year.
And I'm sure that Coach Smith is disappointed about that one. It's always kind of been a priority for Smith to try and maintain those in-state recruits. And, if Cal comes into Oregon and gets 2 of the top guys, that's never going to sit well with you. One of the other things I wanted to note, football related, was, they had the XFL draft this past week. So actually 4 former Beavers were drafted into the XFL draft. Obum Gwacham to Tampa Bay. Former running back Tim Cook went to New York. Offensive lineman Fred Lawina to Los Angeles. And defensive back Tristan Decoud to Dallas. Interestingly enough, Decoud played some time with the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans. So he's staying there in Texas, which is kind of neat for him. So for Oregon State this weekend, second straight week in a row that they're going to face a team coming off a bye in California, and obviously
a team that needed it too.
Right. Cal, I mean, a good team. They were ranked as high as 15, and then they went up into Eugene, lost the close one, defensive struggle 17-7 against the Ducks in Oregon, and now it's for Oregon State. You wonder how much this game is going to be similar to the Utah game. Obviously, you don't want it to be similar if you're an Oregon State fan. But you got a defensive-minded team, a defensive-minded head coach, a disciplined team with NFL prospects on them, and they're coming off a bye, giving them an extra week to prepare. And Jake Luton didn't look too comfortable against that Utah defense last week.
What you just described was almost exactly what happened in Utah's game and with that squad. Oregon State really hadn't played a totally physical team. Utah punched him in the mouth, obviously. And this is another defensive juggernaut in Cal. And with Oregon State's defense, I think the whole game will rely on them and their ability to stop the ball and keep Oregon State's offense get them in a rhythm.
So interestingly enough, we talk about Oregon State facing Cal, a tough defense, and last week against Utah. They lead the nation in turnovers lost with 2, tied with Appalachian State for number 1 overall, and obviously, one of them was the Jake Luton, the pick 6 on the deflected screen pass last week. The other one was a Tristan Gebbia deflected interception. So, I mean, you got 2 interceptions that were both deflections. Obviously, there was a couple other passes that could have been interceptions that weren't earlier on. But Oregon State hasn't lost a fumble all season either. I mean, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx it, but
not killing each other themselves either with
penalties
as much as even Utah last game.
But the disappointing part for Oregon State is that you got to capitalize on that. And their turnover margin is only +2. I mean, they've got 4 takeaways, 2 turnovers all season, which you look at the turnovers for their offense, you're like, okay, that's a good thing. But then defensively, you got to force more turnovers. And especially if you got a guy like Hamaka Rashid Jr., he's, another tackle for loss in the Utah game. That puts him at least 1 for every season. He's 7th in the nation for tackles for loss, leads the Pac-12 with 10.5, leads the Pac-12 with sacks with 6. And then offensive lineman Blake Brandel that you mentioned, he started 42 consecutive games, 4th longest streak in program history. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we will have Josh Yuen of the Daily Californian joining us, football beat reporter. We'll talk some more Cal Oregon State coming up this weekend. Hang with us on KBVR Corvallis.
Do you want to keep up with everything from KBVR FM? On our Twitter at KBVR_FM, you can talk with your favorite DJ, stay up on the latest from our music blog, and let us know what you've been listening to. We care about what you have to say here at your college station, 88.7 FM, KBVR Corvallis.
Accuracy, relevancy, respect. These are the characteristics the Daily Barometer strives to achieve in its coverage every day. Since 1896, the student-run newspaper on campus has been utilizing the skills of Oregon State University students to start conversations which are open to all voices. The Barrel aims to create reciprocal relationships with communities on campus, seeking to make real change. To get involved with the Barrel, visit orangemedianetwork.com and click the Get Involved tab.
Hey, you're tuned in to KBVR FM, Oregon State's student-run, student-operated radio station.
The number 1 place for people with a passion for music to come and get together and share that passion with the world.
Whoa, the whole world.
The whole world.
Yeah, hopefully they're listening to something else.
Should I cancel my audition for American Idol?
You might want to think about it.
Back here with the Beaver Sports Radio Show, Mitchell Monge, Soren, Carr here in Corvallis. And we have Josh Yuen joining us of the Daily Californian, the football beat reporter. Josh, thanks for taking time to come and talk to us today.
Mitch, Soren, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Hey, how's your Wednesday been going, my man?
It's been good. I had a couple of classes in the morning. Overall, we're actually in the office right now doing our game day production for this weekend. So we're excited to have Oregon State in town, just like any other Pac-12 opponent. And we're especially excited to see what Isaiah Hodgins is all about. Artavis Pierce, obviously Jake Luton. We're excited.
Hey, so you get a little multitasking here then, huh? Talking about the game and while you're in there working on it.
A little bit, yeah. I just took a little break for the next half hour or so. Excited to talk some football with you guys.
Right on. So you mentioned right off the bat 2 guys that we wanted to highlight, that Oregon State rather highlights, is Jake Luton and Isaiah Hodgins. You know, they've been a big connection all year, but California, they've only allowed 3 passing touchdowns in 6 games. Is that going to stay the same against a high-powered offense, or not high-powered, I guess, from the game against Utah, but rather a highly potent offense that's got that quick strike ability, especially through the air?
Definitely. So a lot of the work that we did this week in terms of researching Oregon State, I looked back at the UCLA game. Obviously, Oregon State the last couple of years with the coaching change, a couple of things going on, injuries under center. I was really curious to see how in the world did Oregon State have this outburst, not just against UCLA, but also obviously against Oklahoma State, and a couple of plays away from being 3-3, 4-2, against Hawaii and Stanford. So I was very encouraged just from a neutral standpoint that the offense has turned a corner. And to answer your question with regards to this weekend, Cal's secondary, like you mentioned, has been good really for the last year and a half. So I'm really curious to see if Champ Flemings or another one of these secondary receivers can, help Hodgins and Luton out a little bit against Cal's DBs, which are a very deep group. They nicknamed themselves the Takers. They only have 3 interceptions this year, but they had 21 last year, which was the tie for the second most in the nation.
Right.
They're aggressive. They're a hungry group, and it should be a fun matchup to watch.
So the Bears are ranked 13th in the country in pass efficiency defense. Mark is 109.86. Yep. They also have 29 pass breakups. Who would you highlight in the secondary? Is there going to be one guy who shadows Isaiah Hodgins, follows him around the field? We saw that last week with Johnson of Utah, who we mentioned earlier. Is that something Cal's going to do, or are they going to play their standard defense, and if Hodgins is flipping sides, just let whoever's on his side stick with him?
Definitely. Well, Cal's got their 2 starting cornerbacks, Elijah Hicks and Cam Bynum, and then a nickel they also have Travion Beck. My guess is that Cam Bynum's going to be the one shadowing Hodgins, to answer your question. But Aston Davis, the free safety, who was the first to intercept Justin Herbert of Oregon a couple weeks ago, he'll be giving help over the top a lot. So I'm excited to see the matchup between Hodgins and Bynum. But to really answer your question as a whole, I mean, there are so many guys in that secondary room that can step up. It's definitely the deepest group on the defensive side of the ball. So, like I mentioned, it'll be interesting to see if a second Oregon State receiver can step up and make an impact in this game.
So for Oregon State, obviously, they just mentioned earlier this week, senior wide receiver Trevon Bradford will actually end up redshirting this year, which means he'll only be able to play in 4 games as he struggles to come back from a foot injury. So it's up to Colby Taylor, Champ Flemings, and Tyjon Lindsey trying to help take the pressure off Isaiah Hodgins. So for Cal, one guy we haven't mentioned yet, and you knew his name was going to come up, Evan Weaver. What can we expect to see from him?
Yeah, everything you've heard about Evan Weaver, the nastiness, the aggressiveness, the intensity, it's all true. I mean, Weaver he's a co-captain on this team. A little bit of a background in his story is he actually has transitioned to linebacker from defensive end. He came to Cal a few years ago as defensive end, kind of an overweight, not a tweener between the linebacker and defensive end, but last year there was an injury at the inside linebacker position, and he kind of just took it and ran with it. He's become a force of nature in so many ways, really the vocal presence of the defense and the team as a whole. He's going to be flying all over the field. Oregon actually snapped his streak of double-digit tackles in games a couple weeks ago. So I fully expect Weaver to be back and doing his thing once again. He had 22 tackles against Ole Miss a few weeks ago.
Wow.
He's the real deal. He flies from sideline to sideline, which is pretty rare for an inside linebacker of his stature.
Yeah, his height especially.
So I was reading an article on The Athletic the other day about Evan Weaver, and I don't know if you can confirm or deny or if you know anything about this, but actually you mentioned, how he made the transition from DN to linebacker, that he actually went up to head coach Justin Wilcox or one of the defensive coaches and says, hey, you got to get me on the field. I'm the best player on this defense. And his drive and motivation and really just his belief in himself and how he makes everybody better on the field, especially defensively, is just an attribution to his drive and his charisma really on the field.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, the Bruce Feldman piece highlighted it. So the coach in question was Tim DeRuyter, who's the current defensive coordinator at Cal. But in short, the story was when Weaver was back in 2016, he had maybe 11 tackles to his name in his career at Cal. And so when Justin Wilcox brought his new staff to Cal in 2017, Weaver, he approached DeRuyter and was like, you got to get me on the field. I'm the best player here. And DeRuyter said, okay, big shot, here you go. And he's really, like I said, taken and ran with it.
Right. And one of the other guys on that defense that's kind of overshadowed a little bit is Luke Beckett, defensive lineman. He's got 31 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks in 6 games. And those 31 tackles, that ranks 6th in the NCAA among defensive linemen. How disruptive is he going to be against this Oregon State offensive line that looked they looked underwhelming? I think I want to put it against Utah, especially. I mean, Utah's got a bunch of NFL prospects on that front line.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. Beckett's one of the more underrated guys with the defense. The defensive line is probably the weakest link of that group. But with that said, Beckett is the face of that unit. He's a disruptor in every way, shape, and form, batting passes down, sacking the quarterback. He had a huge game against Washington in Cal's upset back in September. So I expect him to fully make an impact on Saturday and throughout the rest of the season. He's a senior. He's a guy who's been through this quite a few times, and he's just a great guy overall. I can't emphasize that enough.
So Cal's defensive backfield has been one of the strengths. You mentioned it earlier on. 27 career interceptions between Hawkins, Davis, Bynum, Beck, Drayden, Trey Turner, and Hicks has one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's second in the country in terms of career interceptions, second only to Louisiana Tech. Oregon State has only thrown one interception on the season, and 2 interceptions. Jake Luton has only thrown one.
Right.
They've been one of the most. They lead the nation in total turnovers, tied with Appalachian State with 2. Is Cal going to be able to force turnovers against this team? I mean, Utah only had 1, and they've been one of the top defensive teams in the country.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's one of the things that I'm going to highlight in our shoot-around piece that we're going to publish later this week. Jake Luton has been fantastic this season from what we've seen. Obviously, the Utah game, and coaches verified this with us as well, it was an anomaly for this offense and the team as a whole. There are a couple plays, as I mentioned, against Hawaii or Stanford from being 3-3 or 4-2 potentially. So Cal's defense is going to stay aggressive. It's going to be aggressive. I don't expect 3, 4, 5 turnovers, but if Cal's going to win this game, they're going to need to force at least 1 or 2. Just given the way that Cal's offense has been dealing with the effects of replacing Chase Garbers under center and having Devon Monster get used to his surroundings. So some plays are going to have to be made defensively, whether it's flipping the field or knocking the ball out when needed. That's really what Cal has done to win games over the past couple of years. It's do just enough offense and just lean on that defense through and through.
Again, if you're just joining us, we've got Josh Yuen, the football beat reporter for the Daily Californian, Berkeley's student-run newspaper. And again, always a pleasure for you to join us in talking Cal football in Oregon State. They kick off this Saturday at 11:30 a.m. So, Josh, this is the second week in a row that Oregon State has faced a team coming off of a bye. And to add to that, a team whose defense is their team identity. What advantage does that provide for Cal over Oregon State? I mean, they got to watch them play against Utah, who, plays a similar style of game. But what does that extra week of preparation do for Justin Wilcox and co?
I think it's huge. I mean, especially a bye week is always, a good time for a team that maybe, unless you've won 5, 6 games in a row, in which case you don't want to obviously stop momentum. I think a bye week is such a huge part to a college schedule, especially when you got so many injuries flying around, all the time. And in particular with Cal, I think the biggest thing that Cal benefited from the bye week is, one, obviously seeing what Utah did to expose the holes in Oregon State on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. And then 2, Cal's offensive line has been decimated all year. Starting left tackle Will Craig and left guard Denna Williams, both out for the season at this point. Center Michael Safell also got hurt against Oregon. He's questionable heading into this week. So I think the biggest factor in terms of the bye week was just hopefully getting some more offensive line guys healthy, if not healthier. So in that sense, the bye week is huge. And the way that Utah competed against Oregon State, obviously gave Cal some sort of like a prototype to go off of. I can imagine, obviously, Oregon State's going to make some adjustments.
Right.
But obviously, it was a huge advantage for Cal to be, watching that game, whereas Oregon State's competing against a very, very good Utah team, obviously.
So you mentioned injuries for California. Oregon State's dealing with some of the injuries on their own end. Namely, Jamar Jefferson is probably, I'm going to guess he's not going to play. They're going to be cautious with him, but he listed as questionable. But you mentioned at the start of our interview, Artavis Pierce. He's on pace to set the school record for rush yards per attempt. He's currently at 5.97. What does Cal have to do to contain Artavis Pierce, who's such an explosive back?
Yeah, I mean, going back to last year's matchup in Corvallis, around the same time as this year,
right.
I was very fortunate that Jamar Jefferson was limited, I believe, in that game. Because I remember praying for that matchup, and Jamar Jefferson was obviously having this breakout year and was really just having a fantastic start to his collegiate career. So, the fact that Artavis Pierce is putting up the numbers that he's had so far, I'm not surprised. I mean, he's been around the block a few times.
Yep.
And Cal's had some trouble stopping the run. Eno Benjamin went off for 3 touchdowns a few weeks ago. Travis Dye struggled a little bit against Cal a couple weeks ago, but C.J. Verdell gassed the Cal front seven for the most part while he was healthy. So, I mean, stopping Jake Luton is one thing. Artavis Pierce, I don't expect to go off against this Cal defense, but I do expect him to keep up the consistency that he's shown this year. He's a great back, like you said, the great yards per carry average. So I expect Pierce to come in here and rebound from, I believe it was, 21 yards last week, right?
Right. Yeah, it held him to 2.1 yards per carry, something that the Utah defense is known for. You mentioned last year's game. I mean, something that Oregon State fans don't want to remember too fondly, 49-7. That was just similar to the Utah game in a sense that it was just got out of control fast and Oregon State wasn't able to rein it back in. The Bears have won 4 of the past 5 matchups versus the Beavers and 3 of the past 4 between the two schools at Memorial Stadium. Do you have a prediction for this game?
Yeah, so we're actually making our game day predictions right now. I thought about this obviously a little bit this week. It's going to be low scoring. I mean, all Cal games have been very close, with the exception of 2 or 3 games since this time last year. Every Cal contest has actually been decided by 1 score. We just touched on the Oregon State game last year, which was the last time that Cal truly separated itself from an opponent in a win. So I expect Oregon State to keep things close. There's this narrative that UCLA is trending in the wrong direction and may replace, quote, Oregon State in the basin of the Pac-12. But I've been genuinely impressed by what Oregon State has done the first 6 games of this year. I don't look so much at the 2-4 record, the 1-2 in conference play. Offense, defense, I don't know about special teams because Shu Harris struggled, I know, taking the ball and stuff.
They got an open kicking battle this week.
Yeah. I mean, just in all facets, I feel that Oregon State has just looked so much improved, and credit to Jonathan Smith and the staff for that. Going back to your question, close game, I expect one score again, maybe anywhere between 3 and 8 points.
Right on. So one of my last questions I got for you is, so at one point this season when Cal was ranked as high as 15th in the nation. Obviously that was when they had Chase Garbers, but in your opinion, what is the biggest difference between the Cal team that was ranked 15th and the Cal team that's going to be playing Oregon State this Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's going to point right to, the fact that Chase Garbers is hurt and Devon Metzger is starting. That's the obvious case. To me, it really is about the offensive line. The offensive line has been so vital to everything that Cal does, especially with Chris Brown Jr., who's this power back. He came in with questions about whether he could be a 3-down back per se. And he did a great job in the first 2 weeks when the offensive line was close to healthy or fully healthy. Now that, there's been injuries on the offensive line, and Brown and Marcel Dancy's backup have suffered their own injuries, Cal has to be able to run the ball and force 7-8 guys to be in the box in order to give Monster the passing lanes that he's comfortable with, because Starbirds was really coming into his own while Monster was on the sidelines as the backup. There wasn't really that competition that we expected heading into the fall. So to go back to what you were saying, the difference between that number 15 team and what we see right now, the offensive line's health, and just the fact that Cal is still adjusting to a quarterback who isn't as mobile as Garbers, and has a really, really nice arm, but just needs to work on some accuracy a little bit. Those are the biggest differences for sure.
So obviously Cal has struggled struggled offensively, coming into their own this season, multiple quarterbacks and trying to get comfortable in the Bo Baldwin offense. So just to wrap things up, is there anything you'd like to promote either for yourself or for the Daily Californian?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, JoshCal2020, Daily Cal Sports. We're also on Facebook, Twitter. The editor Spencer Galanka and the other beat writers are doing they're doing a fantastic job putting together the game day issues. So if there are any Oregon State fans in the area, be sure to pick that up. I also want to give a shout out to Jackson Chris. I know he's like a scout team quarterback currently at Oregon State, but he went to Palo Alto High School, which is where I attended. So
neat.
Rooting for Jackson in that sense. Hope all is well with him. Really, really excited for this weekend. It'll be homecoming weekend. Kind of an odd start time in the morning, but always a good time to have a football game. So finally, thank you guys so much again for having me on the air. I know you guys got a lot going on. Keep up the great work, and look forward to touching base again soon.
Thank you, my man.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
Hey, make sure you get your coffee. That's an 11:30. I know you're going to have to be there a lot earlier than that.
Yeah, it'll be an early riser for sure, but we're excited for it.
All right, thank you so much for joining us again, Josh Yuen of the Daily Californian here on KBVR. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit more Oregon State football. Maybe not reflect on that Utah game too much, kind of a blowout. But regardless, we're going to go ahead and look ahead to the Cal football week. Also, we're going to go ahead and talk some women's basketball. Got an interview from our halftime show of the football game where I talked with Steve Gress. We'll go ahead and listen in on that. On Team USA coming into town to play Oregon State, a good test for Scott Ruick's squad. Soren mentioned it earlier. So we'll go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll come back with more Beaver Sports here on KBVR, Corvallis.
Craft Center membership is now free for OSU students. Pyrography, raku firing, indigo dyeing, stained glass, 3D modeling, screen printing, and more. Come take a class with the Craft Center. We're open Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 10 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Visit us in the basement of the Student Experience Center for more information and to sign up for your free student membership.
As part of the federal law called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, all children with special needs have a right to special education. The disability conditions could include physical impairments, chronic illnesses, intellectual disabilities, hearing and vision difficulties, speech or language impairments, emotional impairments, or learning disabilities. If you know a child who may have a disability, contact your school. If the child is 5 years or younger and you live in either Linn or Benton County, contact the Linn and Benton County Early Intervention Program at 541-753-1202 using extension 106, and if you live in Lincoln County, contact the Lincoln County Early Intervention Program at 541-574-2240 using extension 109.
Hey Beavers, let's talk about sleep. Did you know 2/3 of students experience extreme drowsiness in class, and that poor sleep habits can negatively impact your GPA? It's recommended to get between 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep each night. Blue light emitted from electronic devices hinders the production of melatonin, the hormone that readies you for sleep. If you have trouble falling asleep, try turning off screens at least 1 hour before going to bed, avoiding caffeine before 2 p.m., and maintaining a regular sleep schedule. CAPS wishes you a better sleep tonight. Do you want to keep up with everything from KBVR FM? On our Twitter at KBVR_FM, you can talk with your favorite DJ, stay up on the latest from our music blog, and let us know what you've been listening to. We care about what you have to say here at your college station, 88.7 FM, KBVR, Corvallis.
Back here on KBVR FM, my name is Mitchell Monge, joined by my partner Soren. Carr just got to talk with Josh Yuen of the Daily Californian. If you missed any of our radio show, you can go to Google, or rather go to YouTube and Google or search, KBVR TV, go to videos, and you can find every single one of our radio shows in full length video form. You'll get to put some faces with the names of Soren and myself, as well as we'll have all the promotional material for Josh Yuen and the Daily Californian. Great talk with him. I mean,
Seriously.
very knowledgeable.
Eloquent guy. That was really cool. I know he's prepared and he was excited about it through text and speaking with him before, but that went really well. Great questions there also.
Right. So we'll go ahead and revisit some of our predictions from last week. He didn't really give us a solid number. I got to go ahead and pull it up, but I know my prediction was 20. I think you had 24-14. Was that it?
Last week?
Against the Utah game?
Oh, that was a 27-24.
Okay, yours was 27-24. Mine,
Utah, of course.
Right. And way to twist it a little. Always in your favor. I had 38-24 Utah, and of course it was 52-7. So we'll try to be more accurate.
We don't gamble on this show.
No, exactly. And I'm gonna guess that the line was not more than 45. So
I think the point spread this game is Bears by 11.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it fluctuating between 10, 10.5, 11.
So that's fair. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, obviously, as Josh mentioned, it's going to be a defensive battle.
Really will be.
Right, and Evan Weaver, Luke Beckett, we mentioned both of them, but Cal's secondary is just so impressive, and it's not like one guy really stands out. Obviously, he was mentioning Beck is one of the better players in that secondary, but still, for California, their defensive identity. I mean, everybody says, what do you know about the Cal defense? It's, I've heard of Evan Weaver.
Yeah,
and this team is just solid as a unit. I mean, and additionally on top of that, they're the least penalized team in the country. They lead the Pac-12 in fewest penalty yards, and they rank second in fewest penalty yards per game, third in fewest penalties per game. I mean,
just a well-coached team. I mean, they're almost like polar opposites to the Beavers in terms of the Beavers' offense and Cal's defense, of course. I'm just seriously questioning the rest of their season, and with the injury of their quarterback and their offensive line being banged up, their defense has their work cut out for them. I mean, they play at Utah after Oregon State, then home games against Washington State and USC, then finish at Stanford and UCLA. I mean, it's only 2 games that you would assume they'd win in there, but it's going to be difficult.
Right, and Josh mentioned it. The defense has kind of named themselves the Takers, which is actually really cool because, see if I can pull it up here. We mentioned the defensive backfield has gone for 27 career interceptions. They've allowed 3 passing touchdowns all year. But the name the Takers, can you take a guess? Take, you like that? That's a little ironic there. Can you guess what that comes from?
The Takers. Does this relate to a former squad of any sort, or? No,
it's actually from the 2010 movie, The Takers.
I've never heard of that movie.
You know what? Ironically, me neither. I just saw it on the Cal notes. But
does it relate to some relation to Cal or Berkeley, or?
Not sure, but so their group of 7 players. They've got Trevon Beck, Cameron Bynum, Ashton Davis, Josh Dragon, Elijah Hicks, Jalen Hawkins, Trey Turner. Those 7 guys have started 118 games, and they've played in 263 games.
Well, they hold 13 consecutive opponents to fewer than 25 points, longest in the FBS.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
So we'll see that game this Saturday, October 19th, 11 a.m. Pacific from Memorial Stadium in Berkeley, California. Oregon State goes into the game at 2-4, 1-2 in the Pac-12 under Jonathan Smith. And for the Golden Bears, they are 4-2 overall, dropping their last 2 games after a hot start, 4-0. Now they're 1-2 in the Pac-12 with losses coming to Arizona State and to Oregon.
Real quickly, what is your pick on the game? Score. Got to set these down for week by week.
Okay. I'm going to go. So really, just to preface this, Kerry Agers of the Portland Tribune, he picked Oregon State to win the game. I believe it was 28-24.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go with Cal. I'm going to say 31-17.
31-17.
And I'm going to give him the 17, and I'm going to say it's Everett Hayes is the kicker for Oregon State. That's going to be my guess. I'm going to guess Shoe Cares on kickoffs. I'm going to guess Everett Hayes, and that's just a hunch for me. No real support behind that. Just my guess. And what are you going to go with this week?
Morning in the Bay Area doesn't get much better, but it's going to be really nice for Cal, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I'm taking back what I said last week in the favor of Oregon State. I will be picking Cal in this game.
See, maybe we can help Oregon State out by picking against them.
Yeah. I'm going to pick Cal 27-17 just because I don't think Cal's offense is going to click enough. They don't have a real body of work so far this season that I can really base it off of. They're kind of struggling. And Oregon State's offense might click on a few drives, but I don't think they're going to do any more than 17 to 20 points. So,
well, and especially with Cal coming off, a bye week,
rested and made some adjustments.
Again, the one that really gets me is just that they're a defensive-minded team, and Oregon State has just really struggled to play hard. I mean, Utah was the one, but before that, even when you look at Oregon State's schedule, so here's who they played. Oklahoma State has a mediocre defense, we'll call it. They're more of an offense, but Oregon State put 56 up. Exactly. 36 up on Oklahoma State, and then followed it up with 28 at Hawaii. Hawaii,
another offensive team.
Hawaii's, they gave up, I believe, 50-something points to Boise State this past weekend.
And Washington, let up some points.
45 points Oregon State scored on Cal Poly, who's Big Sky. 28 points on Stanford. Stanford's trying to, they're in a bounce back year.
Usually a defensive-minded sort of team.
Right.
First.
And then UCLA, of course, that 48-point explosion, the highest point total of the year, and then the 7-point dud against Utah. So the next, looking ahead in the schedule for Oregon State, they've got at California, who's a good defense. Arizona struggled. Washington, who's always, perennially a good defense. Arizona State, man, defense has been their identity this year also.
What's going on?
Right, I know.
College football's changed a little bit.
And then wrap this up, they've got at Washington State, who's, their defensive coordinator just stepped down.
Yeah.
They've struggled on the defensive side of the ball. And then at Oregon, who's top in the conference defensively pretty much. And so for Oregon State, given the way that their defense is played, if you look at winnable games based off of defense, you're going to highlight Cal, you're going to highlight Arizona, and you're going to highlight Washington State. I mean, I wouldn't write off Washington, Arizona State, and Oregon, but just given the way that their defenses have played, it's going to be a tough one.
Especially Washington later in the season. I mean, they just seem like they kind of come around, make a turn for the better.
Yep.
Last few seasons,
Chris
at least.
Peterson.
Yeah, of course. I mean, great coach. But I have a good feeling they're going to beat Oregon this weekend also.
Yeah?
I don't think Oregon's clicking enough on offense that they're going to get it going up in Seattle.
Well, with Georgia losing now that's number 3, that's
Oregon has a chance.
Oregon's kind of the
outside shot.
Outside shot, extremely outside. Steph Curry 35-foot range outside. But
Steph Curry, I would not put that against him though.
Anyways, all right, we're gonna go ahead and change gears really quickly to wrap this up. 5:44. We got 16 more minutes with you. And we're going to switch gears to women's basketball. Team USA will play an exhibition game at Gill Coliseum versus Scott Rook's team on November 4th. One of 4 games Team USA will play against NCAA teams, the others being Stanford, Oregon, and Texas A&M.
Cannot wait.
Right. This game will be at 7 p.m. It'll air on Pac-12 networks. And Oregon State fans here can buy tickets to the game. Tickets are on sale now if you wanted to go check that out. I mean, bunch of high-profile names. I'm sure I'm very excited, and we're going to try and get the game on KBVR for you guys as well as just to experience that team. But Soren, you got any quick thoughts before we go ahead and listen to Steve Gress's interview?
It's going to be a really fun matchup for them. I mean, it will give them some personnel to kind of shadow before the season when they're already a really good squad. But in the Pac-12 and a lot of these players formerly were in the Pac-12. Kelsey Plum recently, of course, for UW. It'll just be a really neat experience for them, and I think it'll just be a friendly game, but we'll see how it happens. Maybe some competitive fire will get in there.
So last Saturday, you and I called the football game, Oregon State versus Utah, and on halftime we had Steve Gress, beat reporter, sports editor for the Albany Democrat-Herald and the Corvallis Gazette-Times. He was able to step in at halftime. We chatted a little bit about the game, but then we switched gears to OSU football. So here's Steve Gress. Hope you like it.
Go ahead and switch gears for a second and talk a little bit of women's basketball coming up on November 4th. Team USA coming to town. We've got a lot of big names on that, and going to come in for a scrimmage, obviously.
The best team in the world, as Scott Ruick described, and he's not wrong really in that until somebody beats them, and that group of players, and so that'll be kind of a fun thing. I'm excited to get to see some of them play all together. I've seen a couple of them play WNBA and stuff, but it'll be cool to see that amount of talent on the basketball court on Monday, November 4th.
Yep, I believe, it's Monday night, but
some Monday in November.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it's the 6th. I don't know, something like that.
Who's the favorite, or who's your player you're looking forward to seeing play the most from that Team USA? Do you have one? I
don't necessarily have a favorite. There's a lot. I've seen Sue Bird play, and actually it's cool. She did one of the NCAA tournament games a few years back here in Corvallis, and so it was interesting. It was kind of fun. We were sitting down in the media room, and Gina Mizell was working at the Oregonian, and then we looked over like, no big deal. Sue Bird's sitting right next to us. We're just striking up in a conversation and chatting with her and trying to impart our wisdom of whatever, so that was kind of fun. So, I saw her play a couple years ago up in Seattle. So, I don't know. I don't know if anybody that I'm really looking forward to. I'm just kind of looking forward to see that amount of talent and what they're able to do, and then to see what Oregon State can do against them,
right?
And just to see what they're able to do and how they kind of approach that whole, the whole atmosphere and everything. It's got to be really fun as a player to get to go up there and challenge yourself against the best, and what do you take out of that?
And against people that you idol too.
Yeah, like Destiny Slocum said, these are players I've watched grow. When I first started watching basketball, some of them, Sue Bird's been playing forever. I guess I'd say Diana Taurasi would be really cool to see.
Yeah.
I just love her game and what she's been able to do, and I've never seen her play. So, if I had to pick one, because I want to answer your question, there, Diana Taurasi,
right.
DT.
There we go. And so my last question for you on this is, what can Scott Ruick pull from a game like this that obviously, it's probably not going to be super competitive?
Yeah, well, maybe it will be, and you can pull a lot from
right.
there. I think it's just an opportunity. There's no pressure. You just go out there and have fun, and it's going to be a good test before they start the regular season a few days later, in the preseason WNIT. And I think you just say, like, hey, look, you just went up against the best. Now look what it takes to be at that level. This is what greatness looks like. This is what you need to strive for. If you're able to do that, if you can take away from there and learn. I'm going to guess that the players are going to have an opportunity before the game to get to meet them and talk with them and learn. And I'm sure that those players are willing to share and give advice. So I think all of that, just being in that atmosphere, going up against the best, you get to see what it takes to be that level. And there, just whatever you take from there, you learn what it takes, what you think it takes to get there. We see it, and now let's take some of that into this season.
And get to experience the speed of the game, because as soon as you go up to a different level, speed of the game becomes way faster.
Yeah, how do you react to that? Are you able to get by them? Are they just blow by you? What do you got to do? How do you get defensively? I think for the freshmen too that are coming in, there's a lot expected out of them. Now you get to see. You don't know what the Pac-12 is. I know I talked with Taylor Jones this summer, and she's really missed. I don't know what the Pac-12 is going to be. I've never played against that level of competition. This is going to be an opportunity to maybe kind of get some of those jitters out. Like, well, if I go up against Elena Deladon, I go up against anybody in the Pac-12.
Exactly.
I already went up against a great player, so now everybody else is that's easy. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's like, hey, we've already faced the best of the best. So why would be intimidated or be afraid of facing anybody else that we're going to see this year?
So that was Steve Gress, sports reporter for the Corvallis Gazette-Times, Albany Democrat-Herald, joining myself on the halftime show at KBVR of Oregon State and Utah. A lot of good points there, and really the one that I've been thinking about the most is kind of the last question I posed to him, and I was kind of contemplating it at the time. But if you're Scott Ruick, how do you analyze this game from a where do we improve standpoint, because it's not your typical exhibition game. This is obviously the best players in the world for the women's, and a coaching staff that features 3 Cheryl Reeve, Dan Hughes, Vicky Johnson, coaching respectively the Lynx, Minnesota Lynx, Seattle Storm, and Las Vegas Aces. I mean, you've got a lot of knowledge, you got a ton of skill, and against an NCAA program, and Steve kind of joked that it might be competitive. I don't know what the speed of the game is going to be, but if you're looking at this from a coaching standpoint, how do you pull out positives, negatives, what do we need to do better, and evaluate your team and your performance in a game against a team that's such a higher caliber than you?
I feel like you have to get a feel off of what the other coach is thinking into this game. I mean, if they're really taking it that seriously, if they're just trying to get together as a cohesive unit, I mean, maybe it will be somewhat of a relation to the 92 Dream Team, that locker room or the closed off practice there. I doubt that. But it's just, as a coach, I would really have the players try to dive in and just ask them anything. I mean, understand their mentality before games, their work ethic. I mean, it's simple stuff, but just getting the basics, understanding how they got there, because I mean, being a top 10 program in the country, they understand hard work and they understand what it's like to be at a high stage. But these are the best women at what they do on the planet. And it's pretty special that we're one of the schools highlighted for this situation.
Right. And so I guess I kind of agreed going into it, of the roster, I mean, there's a ton of superb talent on that team.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to pose the same question to you as I did to Steve. Is there any one player you're really looking forward to being able to see on this team?
Yeah, Sue Bird, absolutely. Hopefully she gets in there some. I mean, I know she's way past her prime and everything, but she's one of the all-time legendary members of the WNBA. Another one of them, of course, reigning MVP, Elena Deladone. And another one, honestly, who I really remember from her freshman year at Washington, is Kelsey Plum. I mean, knowing Peyton Pritchard, who plays for the Ducks, growing up playing with him and them playing at the same time as her being a freshman, of course, him, and then Markelle Fultz at the same time. It was 2 number 1 picks from UW. That was a really cool situation. I mean, I remember watching her highlights a lot, and she's an unbelievable shooter. And, of course, Diana Taurasi, but I would say the most excited to watch Sue Bird, without a doubt. How about yourself?
I've got to say Elena Deladon, and just for the fact that, she just won MVP of the league. I mean, a national league championship, and just her play style. And I remember watching her when I believe she played for University of Delaware.
Yeah.
In the NCAA women's tournament. I just remember watching one of their games, because I always like filling out, the brackets, and I picked Delaware to do pretty well. And mostly because of her. And just really enjoyed just watching her game. She's I mean, just an all-around player. She's not one-dimensional. She makes everybody on the court around her better. But you could say that about anybody on this squad. I mean, when I first looked at the list, my favorite player that I was like, oh wow, is Diana Taurasi. But I don't know, her and Sue Bird, they might just play in limited action, get some of the younger gals in there. But for Oregon State, I mean, you've got a ton of talent. Oregon State's put most recently Marie Gulich, but also Sydney Weiss into the WNBA. So it's not like this is a team that's doesn't have their fingerprints on the WNBA in a sense, but it's just really good for Oregon State to, as a high caliber or as a perennial high caliber program even, and I know for a fact it's the toughest conference in women's basketball is the Pac-12 between Oregon, UCLA, Oregon State, Stanford, and Washington, when they had Kelsey Plum, were very good. Cal's usually very good. But for Oregon State in the Pac-12, a high level of competition, this just kind of has to elevate your game going into the season.
Of course. No, and watching for a player like Destiny Slocum,
right?
Watching another small guard in the WNBA have success. I mean, again, going to throw out the example, Kelsey Plum, who's only 5'8", and Destiny Slocum's around 5'7", 5'8", correct? I'm somewhere around there. But still, I mean, just watching how low they get to the ground, little things like that, just to make sure what what can prolong your career in a way, asking them those questions, because of course basketball is hard on your body, and just understanding how they can take it mentally and physically.
So one of the other gals on the team that I'm excited to watch also is Nafisa Collier of the UConn. I remember watching her play in the national championship, and now she's on the Minnesota Lynx, which is neat because her head coach of the Lynx, Cheryl Reeve, is actually the head coach of this Team USA. So that'll be exciting to watch. Again, Monday, November 4th, 7 p.m. You can buy tickets to go watch that, or you can listen live to us on KBVR. We're going to have that game live, hopefully, for you guys, and just making sure everything is ironed out. Last thing I wanted to touch on before we go is you mentioned it earlier in the show, finished 19 under, Oregon State men's golf team, and you actually had a chance to speak with Spencer Tibbetts earlier this week. Was that yesterday?
Yeah, I spoke to Spencer Tibbetts, who is a member of the men's golf team, writing an article on him for the Barometer, a feature for that matter. But so Spencer, really interesting story. I mean, I went up and talked to him. He was a little frustrated after his round. We ended up speaking on the phone later for some more in-depth conversation, but really an interesting guy. I mean, I know I'm aware of who he is. I played with him before once. I mean, it was just briefly in a tournament, but it's interesting to see how some athletes work and how their mind ticks in these areas. He was in the U.S. Open last summer, missed the cut by one shot.
Wow.
He played practice rounds with other pros who raved about him and his ability, like, mentally to navigate golf courses. At the same time, he finished tied 12th in stroke play for the U.S. Amateur at Pinehurst before getting knocked out fairly early in stroke play. But he was speaking about it, and he's saying, I fully felt like I could win this week, but took it away, felt good. He won back-to-back tournaments this fall, finished second this week, under par again. But just the way that he goes about his sport and his passion for it is so cool to see and hear. Anyone who just devotes all that time, I just cannot imagine dealing with that. And he's pretty open about it, how his social life has taken some hits. He wouldn't have expected to get through college or make it even to his junior year. But he's found a way to work around it. He's worked his butt off, and he's in a position where he could be possibly the greatest golfer in Oregon State history.
Yep.
For those of you who don't follow golf, qualifying for the U.S. Open is an unbelievable feat by any measure, and the fact that he did it in college as an amateur is even cooler.
Right. And I mean, we were talking about golf a little bit yesterday, and you mentioned, you got your handicap down to, what was it, 1.5?
Yeah, about there, and played 1 year.
And still, I mean, and this isn't anything on you, but as a 1.5 handicap, you're nowhere even close to that.
Playing Division III golf, you think you're on top of the world, maybe shooting a good score around there. It's just nothing. I mean, it's really ridiculous, the quality of play in any professional sport, but golf especially, just the difficulty mentally and not as much physically maybe in a sense, but just being able to be as repetitive and consistent with a swing and all around in those aspects.
Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up as our time has come to an end, 5:59 p.m. on this Wednesday afternoon. You can see out on our cameras looking over KBVR FM studios. The rain is starting to fall here in Corvallis. So looking ahead for Oregon State this weekend, Saturday, October 19th at 11:30 a.m. from Memorial Stadium in Berkeley, California. It's the Golden Bears of California, Oregon State Beavers. And just really quickly, one last point. One of my favorite radio guys to listen to, aside from John Miller of the Giants, was growing up, because I grew up a Bears fan, hadn't mentioned that yet, but Joe Starkey, play-by-play analyst, play-by-play guy for Cal. He's going to be on KGO 8:10 a.m. in the Bay Area. He was the one who you mentioned, or you remember the the miracle play for Cal against Stanford. The band is on the field. That was him on the call there, and so he'll be, still up there in the press box.
I did not
making
know that.
calls.
That's insane.
Right. So, anyways,
Wow.
yeah. So if you're in the Bay Area and you can tap into 8:10 a.m., give Joe Starkey a listen. That'd be great. For Oregon State, the next home game is against Washington. That is on November the 8th. It's a Friday night at 7:30. And that'll be here in Corvallis. Of course, their next game after California, after the bye week, will be on the road at Arizona on the 2nd of November. Time to be announced. So for Soren, Carr, my name is Mitchell Monge. Shout out to Rob and everybody else here at Orange Media Network who helps us get this on the radio every week. Have a great rest. Let's try that one more time. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, everybody.
Do you want to keep up with everything from KBVR FM? On our Twitter at KBVR_FM, you can talk with your favorite DJ, stay up on the latest from our music blog, and let us know what you've been listening to. We care about what you have to say here at your college station, 88.7 FM, KBVR, Corvallis.